Hello, my beautiful people, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And welcome if you are new. I am so happy that you are here, and I am so happy to be here. Today, we have a very fun and exciting video. I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in August. And this is really fun for me because I actually have my first 5-star read of the year, which is actually insane to me. After 43 books, she has come, she is here, and I have a 5-star. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that today. But also this video is just really fun because I feel like I had a really good reading month. I read 11 books. While the majority were audio, I did have one physical and one on my Kindle. And I just cannot wait to talk to you guys because I feel like this month really was a good reading month and this year has not been a good reading year for me. So I'm so excited to just sit down and yap with you guys about all of the books that I have read. Before we get into today's video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Grab a snack, grab some water, and let's hop into the video. The first book that I read was Two Twisted Crowns, and it actually completes the Shepherd King duology for me. And I won't get into the plot because I don't want to spoil it. However, this book continues to have an amazing magic system. In this book series, there's a deck of cards that all have different abilities and also limited numbers of what these cards will be able to do. And so this book just expands on that, and I really loved it. The characters are also a very strong point in this book, and I felt that Elm really came into himself and Ione kept me hooked. Like Ione was the reason that I was like enthralled in this plot. Like I was like, what is happening and what is going on? I truly loved it and it kept me hooked. This book is definitely a fantasy book with a romantic subplot, and I just really loved it. It was so well written. I ended up giving it 4 stars, which is what I believe I also gave the first book in the series. The next book that I ended up reading was Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. Now, this was my first Carissa Broadbent book, and I absolutely adored it. This book was so amazing. I was hooked, I was engaged, I was like heartbroken, yet I was like being peeled back together. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was happening in like the best way because I knew what was going on, if that makes sense. I feel like with some fantasy books, like you get lost in the story and you're kind of confused as to what's going on, but in like a way that you know what's going on, but you're like, where is this gonna go? Like and that was this book. Honestly, it was so good. This book is about Tazana, and she is actually a slave who is buying her freedom. However, things don't go particularly to plan, and she ends up having to flee the continent, I believe it is, because she goes across the sea. So she flees to this magical organization called the Orders, and from there she gets some training on her powers, and then just things hit the fan, twists come going, and you just will not expect where this story goes. I do not want to say anything more because I truly think that going into this book blind was so much more impactful than some of the twists and some of the turns that came coming that I had no idea were about to happen. This one I would also say has a romantic subplot. It's not the focus of the story, and I really enjoyed that because I felt like there was just enough where I was fed and I was invested, but it wasn't so much that it then just became all about the romance. Max, who's our other main character, he is so grumpy, which obviously I love him because if you watched my last wrap up, you would know that I love grumpy men and I love them in books, and it's so fun. And so to have him be kind of grumpy, kind of grouchy, kind of a like homebody, I was so happy and I just loved reading it. It kept me hooked and I was so invested in every single part of the story. And for its rating, I ended up on a 4.25 just because while I loved it and I was hooked, I didn't love every single element that occurred, and I'll leave it there. While we're talking about this Carissa Broadbent series, I actually did read the second book pretty much immediately. It was so interesting. And I mean interesting in the most interesting way. I think that this book lost the plot. You know how earlier in the first book I was saying I was like sort of confused at some things, but in the way that I didn't know how we were going to get out of this. This book, I was just confused. Like this book, I just didn't know what was going on. I truly do not know what happened in this book. I think that it kind of lost the original plot because it got so wild. Without getting into spoilers, does have new perspectives, which really threw me for a loop. And I think that this one is more that you would read physically. You might get it a bit better because audio just did not work. I'm at a little bit of a difficult point because I ended up giving this 2 stars. And so while the first book was so amazing, the second book was such a miss, and I feel like that's often how it is. So I'm wondering if the third book in the series is going to get this kind of back on the right track because we left off in a place where I can see very good potential on enjoying it. However, I'm just not sure. But I'm also, the completionist in me is like, you have one more book in this series, like you might as well finish it. So I'll have to take a look if I'm going to continue with this series. I haven't made any hard decisions yet, but this book was wild and I was so confused and there were so many things going on. And then when everything came together, I was like, this is kind of unsatisfying in a way. Like it just didn't work for me, but I still think that it could work for someone else in some ways. I have a love-hate relationship with Tessa Bailey because her books I find to be the most cringy and just to be, you know, sometimes a bit strange, shall we say, but I can't stop picking them up. Like I am actually the worst. I read her books knowing that they're probably going to be 2-3 stars, but I have to read them because I find the premise of them quite interesting, and I find her talking about them addicting. I follow Tessa on TikTok, and just her describing her books or different like scenarios, I really enjoy, and I find it so fun. But then when I read them, I'm like, I don't know, they just don't 100% work for me. I read The Au Pair Affair, and I will say that I enjoyed this book significantly more than Fangirl Down. I gave it 3 stars, and we're going to get into what it's about. The Au Pair Affair is about Tallulah and Burgess. Burgess is a professional hockey player who is coming towards the end of his career, but he's still big, he's still gruff, he's still got it. Burgess needs a nanny for his young daughter, and Tallulah ends up fitting the bill perfectly, and they meet through the first couple, which is Fangirl Down. So Tallulah is a marine biology student, and she is really bad about kind of sequestering herself away from the world. But she's also dealing with a lot of things. One particularly is the distrust in men due to bad experiences. And this is actually talked about quite heavily, which I wasn't anticipating going into the book, and definitely had to take a step back and reevaluate where I was at personally, and also reevaluate, okay, can I mentally handle this at the moment? Because it did get quite a lot at one point for me personally, but I don't think that it went into too much detail. Tallulah ends up taking the position as Burgess' nanny, and the two enter a very fun forced proximity. I will say one thing that I really enjoyed about this book was Burgess was very aware of the power dynamic here. He was like, I know that I am, well, number one, older, and number one, have a power dynamic over you. Like, I am your boss. You are also like living with me. So he was very aware of that, and I really, really enjoyed that, and it was quite refreshing to have that be acknowledged, because I feel like in some age gap romances they're not always acknowledged, and so I liked that. Overall, this book was good. It was miscommunication central. Like, there was so much miscommunication to the point where I think audio was the only way that I would have gotten through it, which is how I feel with all of Tessa Bailey's books. And we also had iconic lines such as his abs looked like an egg carton, which gives you the reason why I love and also don't love Tessa Bailey's books. However, I will still be reading them. I will still be here yapping about them, and I feel almost bad about it because I'm almost here to be a hater, but I don't hate them, if that makes sense. Speaking of books that I'm sort of a hater on, I read The Spy and I. Now, when I went away on vacation, I actually saw this book in the chapters, and I was very intrigued by the cover. And also, I really love spy things, and so to have a spy romance, I was like, okay, I'm here for it. It also was giving me like Alias vibes, the early 2000s show with Jennifer Gardner, so I had to pick it up. This book is about our main character, Dove, and she has a twin sister, and Dove accidentally gets mistaken for her twin sister, who is a spy, a secret agent. So Dove gets pulled in by the CIA to help unravel the mystery of what is going on. We have danger, we have intrigue, and we have a hot spy who is watching us. Mendez is our love interest for this book, and he is taking care of Dove, making sure she's safe, but also helping her unravel everything that's going on with her sister, which is quite a loaded situation. It was giving train wreck that you can't look away from, but also I was severely invested in what was going on, even though I was calling most of the things. I think my biggest gripe with the writing of this book was that our main character asked a question or just said something, and then her inner monologue immediately like not retorted it, but like answered it, or like gave like a explanation for why she was asking said question, or even that I already knew said answer to said question. I don't know. It was very interesting, but I found that this book had me laughing and also very invested because of the spy things. I gave it 3 stars. It was a lot of fun. It was definitely insta love or insta lust, but again, I wanted an easy, fast spy-esque romance, and that was exactly what this was. This is the point where I actually went feral. I had my bigger fantasy books at the beginning of the month. I went through a little rom-com stage, and then I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's read the entire Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I have seen it all over TikTok. I've seen it talked about everywhere, and I was like, okay, this is the time. We're gonna do it. And I did it. I read the entire series in 4 or 5 days. I can't quite remember, but multiple of these books I finished in one day. Thank you, audiobook, and also opening shifts at my work for allowing me to have the time to just listen for hours. So this book series follows 5 teenagers who are naturally gifted and able to solve true crime cases in their own special ways. So each character has a unique background that has given them an innate skill they're able to use to solve these cases. This really gave true crime, Criminal Minds vibes, and I really enjoyed it. In this book in particular, we got serial killer snippets. So the killers that we're trying to catch, we got like little chunks of in their mind, which I really like. And particularly our main girl, Cassie, is a profiler. So there was also kind of her going in to the suspect's head, trying to figure out how it happened, why it happened, which I really loved. It was so fast paced. It was very interesting starting to build up the relationship with these characters. And it was also a love triangle, which I don't like, and definitely gave me YA vibes. Like the whole time I was like, this is like The Selection. Like, we got we have some things going on here. Love triangle. So while I really enjoyed the Criminal Minds elements and the criminal aspects, it did also feel quite YA. It is YA, and that's totally okay. So for those reasons, I did end up giving it 3 stars just because I enjoyed it. I found it really engaging and really fast, but it's also something that I wouldn't pick up again. And while I had a really good time reading about it, I don't really think about it anymore. Next day, we read the second book in the series, and this book I also really enjoyed. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and this book was interesting because we got more information about some of the side characters, specifically Dean, and so that was really fun. I felt that in this book, Salome really came into herself, and I just really loved her like mathy, geeky side. Overall, this one still had those Criminal Minds vibes, still fast-paced, still really enjoyed it. Learning more about the characters and getting closer with their friendships was also really lovely to watch. We still had a love triangle though. I felt that this one had a bit more of a YA vibe because the teens were being a bit more controlled by the adults in their lives for reasons I won't get into, but overall it was still a solid read. Next we have All In, which was the 3rd book in the series, and again, don't want to get too much into plot or any spoiler territory. This one I liked, but I didn't like where the story started going. I found the beginning was really cool. We were learning more about Salome, which was lovely, but where the story started going really was not where I wanted it to go and really was not something that I was interested in or particularly enjoyed. So for this one, I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. It was still fast, still had those Criminal Minds elements, but I just think that this one started wandering into the territory of the last book, which I didn't enjoy. Then we have the last book. This book I truly think is where things went off the rocker, off the rails, and I don't know what exactly happened. Well, I do know what happened, but I can't get into it because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. However, where the story got taken was just not my vibes. And I think that this one was particularly graphic. This book series is already upper YA. There is a lot of descriptions that it is quite dark in some aspects because you're dealing with these crimes and also you're figuring out profiling the serial killers and you're also getting in the head of the actual people who are doing the crimes in those little snippets. However, this one just really felt like more adult in that aspect of the gruesome things that were happening. It definitely needed what I felt were some more trigger warnings on what was going on, and it got very dark in some aspects, especially for a YA book. This book was extremely disappointing because while I rated the other ones like low, like a 3-star, I had a really good time and I was really enjoying them when I was reading them. But this one, I honestly wanted to DNF, but I was so committed to finishing it that I ended up sticking it through. But I truly was very disappointed in where it went and also very, not uncomfortable, but sort of uncomfortable where some of the plot went, where I feel like some warning would have been a bit nice. But no, unfortunately, the Natural series started off really strong. The first 2 books I really enjoyed. I could even bump them up to like a 3.5 if I really wanted to, but I think they're going to stick at a 3. And then the middle book I enjoyed, but started to kind of go off the rails. And then the 4th book went off the rails and it wasn't just for me. I think I want to save my 5-star for last. So that's what I'm going to do. The next book that I ended up reading was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J Maas. I did this on audio as well. And my goodness gracious, was this a fun time. Again, I won't get into too many spoilers because it is like the 6th book or 7th book in this series. So I don't want to get into anything that would potentially spoil it for you. This book really felt like a breath of fresh air. I really enjoyed it. I loved where the new storylines were taking us, and I particularly loved Nezerin's. And it connected to the main storyline, but it also just had that kind of breath of fresh air, which I felt like I really needed from this series and what I loved about Assassin's Blade. I also really loved how this book made connections back to Assassin's Blade, so I felt that they were just winning on all fronts. I definitely enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. It was chunky, and I definitely think that at points I was kind of like, I feel like with every book in this series, we have been introduced to new characters that have just been so lovely to kind of then explore. I cannot wait to see where the last book goes. I know that this book series has been quite a task for me in getting through, and it hasn't all been pretty. In fact, it started off and it was actually kind of bad. It was a rough start. We had a rough go. We're on the upward trajectory of what's going on, and I think that the last book with all these plots, all these characters is going to be so good because I'm just craving a book that has 1,000,001 characters at the moment, and so I think that that's going to be something I'm going to get to in September, assuming university doesn't drown me in the first month. I enjoyed it way more than I thought I would. I thought this was going to be really painful for me, but it actually wasn't, and I cannot wait to see where the final book goes. And lastly, my beautiful people, I have my 5-star read, which was Whiskey Business by Elliot Fletcher. This book is simply everything I wanted it to be. This book is simply a warm hug. I felt like I was escaping into these characters' lives. We follow April, who is a celebrity, and before you run away because you don't like celebrity romance, I don't really like celebrity romance either, but this is not a celebrity romance, so do not fear. April is moving to the Isles of Scotland to take over her grandfather's whiskey distillery after he unfortunately passes away, but she must deal with the grumpy whiskey distiller Mal, who has been keeping the place afloat. Oh my goodness, Mal is so cute. He is so anxious, he blushes at everything, and he is so grumpy, and being in his head and also just watching his character made my heart so happy. This book was incredibly special. I really felt like I was just watching these two characters live their lives, yet I was fully transported and so entertained. It was absolutely beautiful. It was absolutely perfect. I cannot wait to pick up every single book that has the Maccabee brothers in it because I need them all immediately, and I'm so sad that they're not out because all I want to do is just binge this interconnected standalone series. The other thing that I love about it is the cover. It's actually stunning. It's actually gorgeous. The tension in this book too was top tier. This book is also sort of a little bit friends to lovers, which I know is a no-no for me personally. And this book doesn't really give friends to lovers because they're kind of enemies, rivals at the beginning. However, we do get little snippets of when she was living on the Scottish Isles before she got famous and before she moved away. So having that gave just kind of like an extra layer of depth to their relationship, which I really, really loved. The only thing that I would change about this book, and the one thing that I would change about this book, is I would say there was about a 50-page chunk where there was a lot of spice, and I just wished that some of their conversations would end just in a conversation and not spice. However, I did take an 8-day reading break as I got to the end. I got to the end and I literally put the book down because I was like, I simply can't finish this book right now. Like, I cannot face the fact of leaving these characters, of leaving this book. So I put it down, and then life got insane. But I thought about it every single day, and every single day I was like, I want to read it, but I don't want to finish it. And so when I picked it back up, then it got spicy. And I think that because I had taken a break from like the first hundreds of pages, that then I craved a little bit more of a conversation. So the one thing I would say is just 1 or 2 more scenes just ending at a conversation and not in spice. But that's like so nitpicky, and I also can't tell if it's just me because I put down the book after all the conversations happened and then the spice kicked in. That's my one little thing. That is everything that I ended up reading in August as of right now. Again, it is the 27th, so if I end up reading more, I will touch on it in my September wrap up. I'm currently reading another book, which I think might be a 5-star, so definitely keep your eye out for that. I had so much fun just sitting here and yapping with you guys, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys again. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you found anything in this video particularly interesting or found a new book, definitely let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys, and I love chatting. As always, I love you so, so much, and I cannot wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye, everybody.